friends, welcome back to Libby's Lit, where we talk books. I hope you've all had a great week and are enjoying the first couple days of spring, real spring for now. It's cold here, so I don't know what you're getting where you are, but I know some places have had snow this week. We've had a little, just enough to kind of dust the rooftops, but it's been good, and we're getting the sunshine. We're getting some green grass, and I have one daffodil blooming. Only one, because I am hopeless at gardening as much as I try every year. I just can't seem to grow diddly. So I don't know what you guys, if you have any secrets, but I could use them. I've been trying a long time and failing every year. So this week, I had a really interesting reading week because usually I read fiction almost solely. I don't read tons of nonfiction. And this last week, I did not read one book that was fictional. Not one. And that's crazy. I never do that. So it wasn't on purpose. It wasn't because I thought, oh, I'll make a video about this. I just, honestly, that's just what I seem to have. And so I thought, well, why not talk about it? So I picked up most of these, actually all of these at the library. My first one is Virginia Woolf's A Room of One's Own. And I will tell you a little bit about my journey with Virginia Woolf is that I never really was interested in her writing until I went to see the movie The Hours, which is absolutely phenomenal. It's so well done. And when I had seen that movie, I was really inspired by it. So I read the book. The book is also phenomenal, really good, really recommend. So then only after I had done those two things did I finally go and read Mrs. Dalloway, which the book The Hours and the movie is based on her version of Mrs. Dalloway. So I just failed to connect with that book. It's the only thing I've read of hers at that point, and I just didn't connect with it. I respect her writing style, respect that she was experimenting and really showing what could be done as far as getting in somebody's head when you're writing, as far as perspective and time and memories floating in and out, and just experimenting and exploring that in that book. So I like it for that respect, but I just, like I say, didn't connect. It didn't feel what I think I was supposed to feel with Mrs. Dalloway. And then I never went back. I never read anything else by Virginia Woolf. However, I did see online someone was talking about this book, A Room of One's Own. And what it is, it's not a novel by any means. It is an essay or group of essays that Virginia Woolf wrote. She was going to speak to a group of women on the subject of women and fiction. And so this book is exploring that. She is looking at, historically why it's been difficult for women to be writers and to live by their art. And just not even live by their art, but to create, to have the freedom to create. And of course, Virginia Woolf was prevalent around the turn of the century. I think she wrote this in 1926, so she was already quite established. And even though she didn't have any children, she still found it difficult to write. Obviously, she had many struggles, if you know anything about Virginia Woolf. But she writes very well in this about the struggle women have, and especially had back then. Now, I was interested in reading this because I knew it was about writing, which interests me, and I knew it was about kind of a feminist take on that. And I'm always interested in something that's early feminist. That perspective I like to see, because not only is it interesting to see how different things were for women back then, but also how much the same things are in many ways, where it still really falls on a woman to raise the children if she has them, to take care of her husband in many respects. And now even more so, we have jobs on top of that. So, she didn't start out wealthy. She was left a inheritance, an annual sum by, I believe, an aunt. And she had 500 pounds a year. And she talks about how a woman needs 500 pounds a year to be able to write. And also, she has two things she wants a woman to have, and one is money, and the other is a room of one's own. So basically a space, any kind of space where you can come, be by yourself, have your thoughts, be able to uninterrupted work on your passion project. And that's what this entire thing goes through. But what I really love about it is that she really gets in her own mind of how she created this essay, of what her train of thought was, how she enveloped all the things from her past into this idea of a bigger, broader picture for women writers. And I really enjoyed it. I really loved it. I was very impressed with her writing, the way that she just can say anything. She's really good at speaking her mind. She's also very good at, she's funny, actually. She's humorous. And I wanted to read just this one thing. She was talking about how she spent a day at a men's college, and she was sitting on the grass by the river, just, dreaming her dreams, thinking her thoughts. And she says, "It was thus I found myself walking in extreme rapidity across a grass plot. Instantly, a man's figure rose to intercept me. Nor did I at first understand that the gesticulations of a curious-looking object in a cutaway coat and evening shirt were aimed at me. His face expressed horror and indignation. Instinct rather than reason came to my help. He was a beetle, I was a woman. This was the turf, there was the path. Only the fellows and scholars are allowed here. The gravel is the place for me." So that was her funny way of saying, "Oh, I'm just a woman. Sorry, I can't sit on your grass." And the whole book is kind of filled with things like that about the injustice. She goes into a lot of how she researched women's history, and she thought, I'm going to find some answers here. And she's like, this is ridiculous. Every man with no possible way of knowing anything about women has developed all these theories about women that are usually negative and usually think women are inferior. And so it's just really fun to read it, to see the similarities between now and then, to see the differences between now and then, and just to get into her mind a little bit. It was just a lot of fun. And I will read the last little paragraph too, because I thought it was really nice. But she's talking throughout this book about if Shakespeare had a sister. If Shakespeare had a sister, could she have become like Shakespeare? And she says, no, it couldn't have happened. She didn't have the time. She didn't have the money, basically using this as an analogy for all women writers. But she says, she's talking about the future and why women should write, even if it's hard for them, even if they're not getting anywhere with it, etc. And I just really like this. It says, drawing her life from the lives of the unknown who were her forerunners, as her brother did before her, she will be born. As for her coming without that preparation, without that effort on our part, without that determination that when she is born again, she shall find it possible to live and write her poetry, that we cannot expect, for that would be impossible. But I maintain that she would come if we worked for her, and that so to work, even in poverty and obscurity, is worthwhile. And I love that so much. I love it so much because if you think about women writers, they really did not make a lot of money. And a lot of times writers didn't make money and still struggle to make money. You think about somebody having a really great book that everybody knows about, but if they don't continue to output constantly and maybe get movies made and that sort of thing, they really are struggling to get by. And I think that's something that I like about the book as well, is how she talks about, that unjust compensation for art. People all take in the art, and we take in, not everyone reads, but everyone watches a movie or a TV show. And usually that started out as someone's brainchild and on a piece of paper. So yeah, I like her perspective on that. So I do suggest A Room of One's Own. It's a really good one. And the next one I got was a biography of L.M. Montgomery. She is the author of Anne of Green Gables and many, many other books in the same vein. It is called Looking for Anne of Green Gables by Irene Gamble. And I actually do not recommend this book. So I grabbed this at the library. I was picking up a different book and saw this on the shelf and thought, well, why not? I've never read a biography of her. And I really love Anne of Green Gables and love this author and everything that she's put out that I've read. If you don't know her, her stories are very positive. They're in some ways realistic, but they're just beautiful. They're just so beautifully written. She's such a nature lover, and she puts her vision of nature into her writing, and it's so beautiful. So this book, I didn't like that the author seemed to feel like she needed to put forth kind of a intriguing new idea about Ellen Montgomery, who went by the name Maud. Maud's her middle name, so I might call her that just for ease. But she was really questioning her sexuality and suggesting that she really didn't like men, that she preferred women, based off her journals, based off her relationships, etc., etc. And, you know, maybe she did, maybe she didn't. I don't know. But I always feel like if somebody doesn't live that way and put that out there and want to share that with somebody, if that really is the case, then it's not somebody else's business to be trying to dredge that up and start some theory and just for attention on your own book. You know, that's how I felt about this. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe her intentions were not nefarious, but I feel like it was kind of unfair to Ellen Montgomery, who, you know, at that time that wouldn't have been acceptable. And I just don't know that that's something she would have really wanted drug out if that was really true. Plus, I didn't think that she really made the case for it. I didn't think that just because she had really deep friendships, because Maud Montgomery, she was basically orphaned. Her mother died shortly after she was born. She wasn't even 2 years old. Her father then left, went to the other side of Canada, and really didn't come visit, but I think one time, and then he remarried. The new stepmother wasn't nice to her, didn't want her around, and so she lived with her grandparents, who also were not very kind to her and weren't very loving, and didn't really entertain her very airy-fairy sort of imagination. So I don't know. I think that anyone who is like that and living in kind of that loneliness, that of course when she made friends, she felt very strongly about it. And it was also a period of time where they were really encouraging women to, you know, have those deep friendships. And that's actually in the book. She did talk about how that was popular at that period of time for women to really, you know, have soul sisters. And so I think that's totally normal and expected here. Now, she didn't really want to get married, at least not early on. She really was a career-focused person from the time she was a teenager. She wrote poems, short stories, and she was submitting them. Didn't tell anyone, but she was submitting these and started getting published really early on. I think she was 16 maybe when she got the first story published, her first poem. So she wrote over 500 short stories, I believe, in her lifetime. I mean, she was just putting those out, talking about, you know, putting an output of writing out. She was the one. And she wrote 20 novels. So I did like in this book that she goes into how Anne of Green Gables came about. And I learned a lot about her and how she's similar to Anne and how, you know, she was that alienated child in so many ways. But I didn't like, you know, just that a speculation on her. I don't like speculation in a biography so much. Just tell me what happened. And then I also didn't like that the author kept calling her self-involved. She would say that she was kind of cold and self-involved. And I didn't get that from this either. I mean, you've got her loving these deep friendships she had, and she stayed with her grandmother and took care of her when no one else would, even though she wanted to go see the world and wanted to, you know, expand her career and wanted to travel. She stayed with her grandmother, so I can't see her as self-serving. It's just too hard for me to see that. And then when she did get married, her husband ended up having mental illness, and so she had to take care of him. And then she ended up basically having a lot of problems as well. So, yeah, I just didn't like the take on this at all. So, although I learned some things, I would suggest taking a different route if you want to learn about Ellen Montgomery. So, the book I was actually after when I picked that off the shelf was this one. And this is The Landscapes of Anne of Green Gables. So this book I really loved. I have always wanted to go to Prince Edward Island. And this book is just full of beautiful pictures. A lot of them are flowers because Ellen Montgomery just talks about flowers so much. Everything in her books, it's like nature's alive. It's like everything is alive and has a spirit and has a thought and has a feeling. And it's just, maybe as an adult, that's not as realistic, but as a kid reading these books, it's just something that I really felt. I don't know. When I first saw Anne of Green Gables, the I think it's 1985 version, I just fell in love with it. I was so in love with it. And I was 14 probably. And I felt like I was seen for the first time. Like, that was the 80s. It was a weird time. And I was at an age where I was supposed to be growing up and accepting everything about the society I was in. And I didn't really care for the society I was in. And I didn't really care for the shallowness and the parties and all of that sort of thing that other people at school seemed to be getting into. And there just didn't seem any place for someone like me who did love nature and loved reading and loved writing and wanted to be a writer. And here was this movie where Anne wants to be a writer, and it just moved me and changed, really, I think it changed everything for me, to be honest. I started to just stay home on the weekends and write. I wrote on a typewriter on my floor of my room. It was probably such a mess. My mom probably hated that, but hey, sorry, Mom. And anyway, then I read the books afterwards. So Ellen Montgomery is a big part of me, I think, a big part of who I am. And I just think that this is a great book if you're interested in Prince Edward Island. It tells you where everything is. It's got maps and tells you just everything, where to find everything, what you can do in each location that is honoring of Ellen Montgomery, or just a place that you want to go and see. And also in Ontario, where she lived as well. So I highly recommend this. She also uses excerpts from the book, and she uses a lot of journal entries too. And they kind of contradict those a little bit in the last book, that they're more positive. They're not negative like that at all. So this book's really inspiring, and happy if that's more your speed or more what you're into. So next, I got the Brontes. This thing is huge. So I don't know how I have not read this already. Honestly, I've had it in my Amazon. Okay, so it's in my save for later, but I put it in my cart probably a year ago, and I just never pulled the trigger on getting it. But I don't buy a lot of books through Amazon, so that's probably why. But at any rate, I'm only 50 pages in, and so far I really like it. So far it's just about Patrick. So Patrick's Bronte's father. But she really details everything. So if you're one of those people who loves to know everything that's going on with a person you're reading about, it will tell you all about his education, how Patrick was at the top of his class, and how hard he worked, and really how smart he was. And I'm just at the point now where he's just meeting his wife. So like I say, I'm not far in there at all, but I hope I can finish it. It's a lot. It's a lot. And usually I have some fiction on the side, and I just kind of dip in and out of nonfiction. So we'll see how long it takes me to read this, but I did get it from the library, so I do need to return it at some point. Anyway, this is a really good one, and it gets into all of the socioeconomical things. It gets into, she goes back and looks at old newspapers, and she looks at old records of all sorts. And so I had previously read The Life of Charlotte Bronte by Elizabeth Gaskell, who's also a contemporary of Charlotte Bronte, who wrote as well, and wrote a lot of good books as well. I don't remember much about the biography. I read it many years ago, honestly. And so I really, so far I'm preferring this one. I don't think, Gaskell gets some criticism for that book, that maybe things weren't exactly the way she painted them, that maybe she did things in a way that made it look like Charlotte was different than how she was, or how the family was a little bit different than how she portrayed them. Like she was glossing over some things. So I don't know. I'm not going to speculate on that, because I don't know. Apparently they were friends, and I don't know, but it didn't make a huge impression on me. I can tell you that. So I would recommend this if you are really a Bronte fan and want to know more. So that's a good one. Now this one I bought. I actually did not get this at the library. I tried to read Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil by John Berendt, or Berendt, I'm not sure how you say that, years ago. And I just got a few pages in and I was like, this is not what I thought it was going to be. It is nonfiction, but it's written as a novel. It takes place in Savannah. And that's why I bought it, because I am traveling to Savannah in June. And I just wanted to have something that really made me think about Savannah, made me really know the city as I go there and see the landmarks and be like, oh yeah, he talked about that and that. So that's why I picked this up from Thrift Books, and I'm excited to read it. There's a lot of quirky characters in here. They're not really characters, they're real people, but it's kind of about the elite of Savannah and kind of that darker side of people, and not so much, it's a murder that takes place and it's a real thing that happened, but they kind of know who did it the whole time. They just don't really know why or all of the circumstances surrounding it. And he goes into all of that apparently. So I do look forward to reading this as well. And I thought we'll throw it in there. I don't know if I'm going to start it right away, but it's on the list. So I thought I'd throw that in with my nonfiction for the week. So anyway, that is what I've been up to. I'm trying to think what I want to read that's fiction. I should probably go back to War and Peace that I started, that I've just abandoned. Sadly, I need to get back to it. If not, I'm kind of being pulled toward The Moonstone by Wilkie Collins. I've read The Woman in White, and I just loved it. I really thought he did a great job with that. And Moonstone, I think, preceded that, I believe. I think Moonstone was first. So I've owned it for a while, and I haven't read it, and I really want to. I'm feeling drawn to that, so I might read that next. Anyway, I hope you all have been reading some great books. I hope that you will let me know what you're up to, what you're reading, and maybe what nonfiction you found that surprised you, that you enjoyed or did not enjoy. Because sometimes, you know, we don't have to love every book that we read, and I think it's good to kind of talk about that too. So I hope you've had a great week, and I can't wait to hear from you. Like or subscribe if you want, and we'll talk later. Bye.